Before the first punch is ever thrown, before a single word is exchanged, the outcome is already sealed in the mind. That's where the real war happens. And Machiavelli knew this better than anyone. He didn't fight with fists or armies. He fought with perception. He understood something brutal about human nature. You don't need to defeat someone in a battle if you've already broken their spirit before it begins. Because here's the truth. If their hands still move, but their belief in themselves has been quietly shattered, you've already won. And the most ruthless part? You don't even have to raise your voice. No yelling. No threats. All it takes is a whisper of doubt, a subtle shift in the air. Because once someone begins to question themselves in your presence, they're not fighting you. They're fighting a ghost you planted in their head. Machiavelli's golden law of psychological intimidation was never about brute strength. It was about illusion. It is not necessary to be strong, he implied, only to appear strong. So before your rival even thinks about stepping into the ring, whether it's in business, influence, reputation, or attraction, you craft a myth. Not a lie, not an exaggeration. A myth. A psychological illusion so compelling they begin comparing themselves not to you, but to a version of you that may not even exist. They're not facing a person. They're facing a legend built on silence, presence, and posture. Posture alone is a weapon. When others panic, you remain calm. When they scramble to prove themselves, you move with slow, quiet control. You don't need a resume. You don't need receipts. You just need to behave as if you've already conquered somewhere else. Because the human brain fills in gaps, and it always fills them with assumptions. An assumption is the silent killer of confidence. This is how you disarm someone without ever attacking them. You don't insult them. You don't argue. You don't even challenge them directly. You imply. You let the weight of suggestion do the damage. You might say, "You remind me of someone I beat once." Or, "This should be interesting. I usually don't get challenged this easily." Or even just, "Don't worry, everyone improves over time." See, none of these are overt jabs. They're faint smiles hiding a dagger, polite on the surface, but underneath, they're cutting into something deeper. Your rival won't call it out, but they'll feel it. They'll start wondering if they're really ready, if they really belong. And that wondering creates hesitation. And hesitation is where power dies. Everyone carries a fracture inside them, a past failure, a lingering insecurity, a quiet doubt they hope no one sees. Your job isn't to expose it, it's to touch it without naming it. Let's say you're preparing for a debate, and you know the other person is insecure about being inexperienced. You don't say, "You're new." That's too obvious. Instead, you smile and say, "You've got guts." Most people wait until they're more prepared. Or, "You remind me of me when I was just starting out, making all the rookie mistakes." Now you've done something far more lethal. You've turned their self-consciousness against them. For the next hour, they'll be trying not just to win the debate, but to prove they're not what you implied. And in doing so, they lose fluidity. They lose instinct. They lose dominance. Because their focus isn't on clarity. It's on correction. You haven't attacked their ideas. You've attacked their identity. That's the real battlefield. Power isn't always about direct confrontation. Often it's about narrative. It's about framing. It's about perception. Because before someone competes with you, there's a crowd watching. Spectators, judges, peers. The crowd doesn't just see a fight. They feel who owns the room. So your first victory must be with them. And here's how you do it the Machiavellian way. Subtle charm. Not approval seeking, not jokes that beg for laughs, but light, biting humor. Quiet confidence. Calm statements that frame you as someone who's been here before. Then acknowledge your rival. Gently. Say, they've got spirit. Or, let's see how this goes. Or, the killer line, I remember my first time being in this position. You're not mocking them. You're infantilizing them. And the crowd will absorb that tone without even realizing it. Now, your rival doesn't just feel like the challenger. They feel like the child, the new kid, the one who still has something to prove. And that's the shift. You don't need to brag. Just let them see your influence in motion. Let them witness people respecting you in a different setting. A conversation where you're the one being asked for insight. A moment where you solve a problem without effort. Machiavelli called this passive intimidation. You're not waving your status in their face. You're letting them observe it. And the human mind is cruel when it compares. It doesn't need facts. It works on assumptions. If others admire you, the rival begins to wonder, if they can do all that so easily, what chance do I have? And that thought is poison, especially when paired with silence. Silence is a power move, because silence allows the opponent's mind to fill in the blanks. Let them see you win without fanfare. No explaining. No validation. That silence becomes your signature. It says, this is normal for me. And what's normal for you begins to feel impossible to them. Even if they've trained, even if they're sharp, even if they come prepared, you don't need to overpower them. You just need to make them pause. Make them wonder. What if I'm not as good as I thought? What if they're better than they look? What if I lose and everyone sees it? That tiny fracture in their mindset becomes the entry point for collapse. The way you open that crack. Simple questions, just before the moment of tension. Nothing aggressive, just curiosity. You sure you're ready for this? Have you done this before? Let's see how you handle pressure. Say it like you're amused, not doubting, just interested. But curiosity kills certainty. And someone without certainty is already halfway defeated. It sounds small, but in a high-stakes room, when tension is high and performance matters, most people crack. Machiavelli wouldn't. Because he understood this. The eyes are the gateway to dominance. Hold eye contact 1 second longer than they're comfortable with. Don't blink quickly. Don't look away. Stay calm, still, detached. Like this is routine. And if they're the first to break eye contact, they've just told the room who really holds the power. Because here's the dark truth. By the time the competition begins, they're not just facing you. They're facing the doubt you planted, the crowd you framed, the silence you weaponized, the myth you built. You didn't fight them. You made them fight themselves. That's Machiavellian warfare. You don't wait for the battle. You end it before it begins. Confidence isn't armor. It's scaffolding. It looks solid from the outside, but it's held up by memories, perception, and emotional momentum. Machiavelli knew this intimately. He understood that if you learn how confidence is built, you can learn exactly how to dismantle it, quietly, precisely, from within. Because no man walks into a confrontation alone. He brings his entire self-concept with him, his identity, his narrative, his memory of past wins. And if you can shake just one of those pillars, just slightly, he starts to wobble. Not because he's weak, but because all confidence is conditional. This is where advanced tactics begin. You don't need to argue. You don't need to insult. You only need to draw attention. Not to what someone says, but how they say it. Not to their flaws, but to their habits. And that's the first layer of psychological erosion. Before the clash, before the moment of performance, find something small. The way they speak, the way they gesture, the way they stand, and point it out, casually, not critically, just with curiosity. You've got a unique speaking rhythm. It's different. Your posture's interesting, confident, or nervous. You always do that thing with your hands. Is that a habit or part of your strategy? See, none of these are insults. They're observations wrapped in ambiguity. But what they activate is self-awareness. Now, instead of entering performance mode, they enter analysis mode. They start thinking about how they look, how they sound, how they're being perceived. And that internal shift, from fluid action to self-observation, is fatal. Because performance thrives when people feel unseen, when they're in flow, when no one's watching. But the second you put a spotlight on them, their movements stiffen, their words feel rehearsed, their timing breaks. You didn't confront them. You corroded them. Confidence also thrives when someone believes they're exceptional, not just good, exceptional. So, you use contrast. You make them feel average, replaceable, not by belittling them, but by comparing them, subtly, to someone who already won. You remind me of someone from last year. He was on another level, but I see the energy. This is good. Not as sharp as the girl who dominated last season, but definitely promising. Oh, you're going with that strategy? I saw someone do that really well once. They don't hear an insult, but they feel the downgrade. They're no longer the protagonist in their own story. They've been repositioned as the sequel, the imitation, the not quite. And when someone no longer feels like they're blazing a path, they stop acting like a leader. They start acting like someone trying to live up to a name. That's how you kill sharpness, by replacing aspiration with comparison. One of Machiavelli's coldest tactics was overloading the opponent with preparation, not by giving them real reasons to prepare, but by making them fear what you might do. You don't declare your weapons. You suggest there's more to you than meets the eye. You probably did your homework on me. I'd have done the same. I've done this so many times it's hard to stay interested unless it's a real challenge. Hope you're not underestimating what you're walking into. These lines don't declare strength. They imply depth. And the opponent begins spiraling, not because you showed dominance, but because you suggested there's something hidden. Now, they start rehearsing more, overthinking, trying to predict what you'll do, trying to be perfect, trying to prepare for every angle. And preparation, when driven by fear, becomes a trap. It creates rigidity. It kills spontaneity. It leads to exhaustion before the moment even arrives. That's how you walk someone into a fight already tired. Here's where the knife gets sharper. Compliments. Not sincere. Not generous. Surgical. Compliments that look encouraging on the outside, but rot confidence from within. You're better than I expected. This might actually be close. You've improved a lot since last time. What do these really say? They say, I didn't expect much. They say, you're still catching up. They say, you're still not at my level. Now, you're rivals, not just trying to win. They're trying to earn your approval. And that shift from competition to validation seeking is where their dominance dies quietly. You don't need to beat them. You've already become the standard they're measuring themselves against. Silence is another weapon, and one of the most terrifying. In social environments, when everyone's talking and one person remains still, that person becomes the gravitational center of the room. People start wondering, why aren't they speaking? What are they thinking? What do they know? Machiavelli understood that in a room full of noise, silence is power. He would speak less, observe more. He'd hold eye contact a second longer than comfort allows. And when his rival made a joke, he wouldn't laugh. When they shared plans, he'd just nod. When they looked to him for approval, he'd delay his response, forcing them to squirm in the silence. That breaks rhythm. Because now you are the mirror, and they're projecting every insecurity onto your stillness. People fear what they can't read, and the most unreadable force in any power game is calm. But it doesn't stop there. Confidence isn't just internal, it's social. It's reinforced by the people around someone, their circle, their allies, the ones who affirm their value. So what happens when you don't attack the person, but subtly infect the group? You don't need to turn friends into enemies. Just plant seeds. Compliment their allies more than you compliment them. Say, you've got sharp people around you. You'll need them. Now the people around your rival start second-guessing. They begin treating your opponent not as a leader, but as someone who needs backup. And when that happens, the emotional support system starts to crumble. Your opponent doesn't just doubt themselves. They start doubting the people closest to them. And once that fracture sets in, the collapse spreads like a virus. But Machiavelli's most chilling rule: never acknowledge the competition. Because the moment you recognize someone as your rival, you raise them to your level. You say, "We are equals." But if you say nothing, if you treat them like background noise, like someone trying to play a game you've already mastered, now they're not just competing uphill. They're invisible to you. They're not in the arena. They're in the audience, watching a player who doesn't even know they exist. And nothing breaks confidence like the feeling that your presence is irrelevant. That's the psychological decapitation. It's not in the insult. It's not in the confrontation. It's in the absence. You didn't attack them. You erased them. That's not ego. That's strategic dominance. This is how the Machiavellian elite win. Not with noise, not with confrontation, but through erosion, slow, silent, and surgical. They don't need to beat you in open battle. They rearrange the battlefield, so by the time you arrive, you've already lost belief in your weapons. True power doesn't shout. It doesn't posture. It disorients. Machiavelli never cared about brute force. He cared about framing. He cared about altering the opponent's internal map, so that even if they show up strong, they second-guess where they stand. The most devastating tactic is also the quietest one. Make them unsure of themselves, not by insulting, not by mocking, but by changing the emotional weather around them. Because most people walk into competition with a story, a self-image. I'm the underdog. I'm the expert. I bring fresh energy. These stories fuel performance. They give people psychological fire. So how do you kill that fire? You reframe their story. You turn their supposed strength into a liability. You don't argue the facts. You warp the frame. You're bold, sometimes overly so. That's dangerous if clarity matters. You're the new blood, refreshing, But a clean slate also means no track record. You've got confidence. Good. Just make sure it's not hiding a lack of experience. Suddenly, they're rethinking everything they walked in with. Their pride turns into self-surveillance. They begin questioning whether the very qualities they trusted are now weaknesses. And when someone questions their own identity mid-battle, they're already bleeding. This is the essence of Machiavellian manipulation, the shift from debate to disorientation. Because you're not attacking their logic, you're dismantling their self-belief. Now here comes one of the darkest tools in the psychological arsenal, the silent public signal. When someone makes a mistake, says something off, or fumbles, don't correct them. Don't challenge them. Just go silent. Maintain eye contact. Maybe raise an eyebrow. Look around the room. Say nothing. The room will respond for you. People will shift uncomfortably. Some might laugh awkwardly. Others will glance at each other. And just like that, your rival doesn't just have to face your mind. They're now up against their own embarrassment. You didn't insult them. You didn't react. You let the silence burn them alive. And that's the key. Because once someone feels socially exposed, even for a moment, that humiliation spreads through their performance. They tighten up. They lose fluidity. They become smaller, more reactive, less sharp. And in a psychological war, one moment of embarrassment can snowball into complete collapse. Every power struggle has a breaking point, a moment where tension spikes, where someone makes a mistake, where the spotlight grows hotter. Most people, no matter how sharp, crack in those moments. They rush. They speak faster. They try to explain. They try to win back control. But Machiavelli, he would do the opposite. Stillness, silence, zero reaction. Because if your opponent is flailing and you're unmoved, you don't need to say a word. Everyone watching will see who holds control. And worse for them, even they start to believe it. Their mind says, if he's not even reacting to this, maybe I'm the one behind. Even if you're not winning. If you look like you are, their belief system starts to fracture. That's what Machiavelli mastered. Belief over behavior. Because once you control what someone believes about themselves, you don't need to tell them what to do. Their behavior will align with their doubt. That's why he never chased victory. He influenced belief. And here's the secret behind every confident person. It's not armor, it's glass. Maybe painted gold, maybe reinforced over time, but still, glass. Fragile. Impact it just once at the right pressure point, with the right word, the right silence, the right raised eyebrow, and it doesn't just crack, it collapses. The most brutal Machiavellian victory is invisible. You don't see your opponent fall. You see them smile, nod, speak. But underneath, their hands are trembling. Their voice falters. Their timing is off. Their internal frame is shattered. And no one even touched them. Because you didn't confront them. You didn't acknowledge them. You just made them unsure of themselves. Now, we enter the final phase. The sharpest tools. The psychological traps that dismantle confidence without even touching it. Not through aggression, but through absence. Not through dominance, but through suggestion. The first trap, act like nothing is at stake. When someone challenges you, they expect you to react, to defend, to protect your image. So what happens when you don't? You observe calmly. You speak less. You behave like the outcome doesn't matter. Because for you, it's already certain. This terrifies people. Because when they sense no urgency in you, they begin to question if they're even playing the same game. If you act like you've already won, they feel like they're the only one struggling. And that loneliness and effort kills momentum. That's the illusion of effortless power. And then you shatter their sense of predictability. Most people follow patterns. They dress a certain way, speak a certain way, behave how people expect. You don't. You shift. You adapt. You disrupt. You speak gently, then sharply. You charm, then cut. You switch from calm to piercing clarity. And when they think they've figured you out, you evolve. Now they can't prepare. They can't predict you. And what you can't predict, you can't compete with. Machiavelli understood this better than most. If they can't define you, they can't defeat you. So you become multipolar. In meetings, go silent. Then speak like a scalpel. In public, stay composed, then drop a line that cuts through the air. The moment they start preparing for a version of you, change it. That's how you destroy confidence, by removing the target. Because a competitor needs a target. Their confidence depends on knowing what they're up against. If you erase that, they're swinging at shadows. But no one wins alone. Everyone has a support system. Allies, echo chambers, applause, people who reinforce their identity. So how do you win the war without touching the person? You isolate them, not physically, psychologically. Dominate conversations before they speak. Redirect group attention toward you. Talk about them, but never to them. Subtly ignore them in key social moments. What happens next is automatic. People mirror power. If you treat someone like they're not relevant, the group unconsciously follows. And now, your competitor walks into the arena without their support system. No cheering, no energy, just the sound of their own breath. Their confidence begins to rot, not from the outside, but from within. That's the brilliance of strategic isolation. It doesn't remove people from their life. It just makes them feel alone in a crowded room. And no confidence survives that. When you isolate someone psychologically, you don't need to insult them. You just deny them reinforcement. A look that doesn't arrive. A handshake that's just too late. A compliment given to everyone but them. They'll feel it. And it will start to eat them alive. Because confidence doesn't live in the mind. It lives in mirrors. In the way others reflect you back to yourself. Take away the reflection, and people don't just question their performance. They question their identity. Machiavelli understood this. He knew that people don't crumble because of reality. They crumble because of perception. The moment someone starts to feel like the room sees them differently, they start performing for the room, not the goal. And that's when they lose. Not to you, to themselves. This is the most brutal law of psychological power. You don't need to crush the person. You only need to corrupt the image they hold of themselves. Confidence is a house of cards. And it doesn't fall from a punch. It falls from a whisper, a glance, a silence, a shift in tone. But here's the paradox. You must never seem like you're trying to destroy anyone. The moment you look like a villain, the group turns. People root for underdogs. They defend the wounded. They resent cruelty. So you must always move under the mask of grace. You don't reject them. You just forget to include them. You don't correct them. You let others notice. You don't attack. You elevate someone else. All your moves must be clean, surgical, no fingerprints, and if they break, if they overreact, lash out, or spiral, you remain calm, composed, even concerned, because now you win twice, once in power and once in perception. You become the reasonable one, the stable force, the person others now trust more because you didn't flinch while someone else fell apart. This is the Machiavellian art of controlled contrast. You don't shine brighter by screaming. You shine brighter by staying still, while the other person burns themselves alive. And here's the deadliest part. You do it rarely. Not every day, not every room, not with everyone. Because if you use these tactics constantly, people feel it. The air becomes heavy. The charm wears off. You become predictable, even feared. And fear is not the goal. Control is. So the most Machiavellian minds reserve their power. They wait. They watch. They let others rise and roar and flex until the exact moment that requires surgical precision. One glance, one phrase, one unspoken moment, and the entire psychological structure of the room tilts in your favor. This is how power flows, not through endless effort, but through decisive timing. The predator doesn't chase, it watches. The master doesn't dominate, he directs the current. And the king doesn't argue. His silence becomes the argument. You must learn to love stillness. You must learn to trust invisibility. Because in a world obsessed with attention, the Machiavellian thrives in the shadows. Not because he is afraid, but because he understands the truth. Attention is the drug of the weak. Influence is the weapon of the strong. So here's what you do. Build silence into your arsenal. Practice letting others speak first, fail first, reveal themselves first. Watch not just what they say, but what they reveal when they think they're winning. Because that's when people get sloppy. That's when their real weaknesses show. That's when you see the cracks. And when you strike, do it once. Not to destroy, to reframe. A single phrase can flip a room. A single moment of calm can expose someone's panic. A single smile can make someone question their entire mood. This is not about being cruel. It's not about being better. It's about knowing where the real power lives. Not in domination, but in disruption. Not in aggression, but in alignment with perception. Not in always being seen, but in always being felt. Let them chase applause. Let them chase praise. Let them think that visibility equals control. You'll move like the wind, quiet, precise, never emotional, always strategic. And by the time they realize what's happening, by the time they look up and feel the shift in the air, it's already too late. Their confidence isn't just damaged, it's reprogrammed, rebuilt around your presence. Now you are the mirror. You are the rhythm. You are the psychological North Star. Everyone orients around, even if they don't know why. That's the Machiavellian truth they'll never teach you. You don't need to be feared. You only need to be the force they feel. Without knowing how or why. The greatest power is not loud. It is not visible. It is subconsciously obeyed. Disappear and still command the room. That is how you don't just win. You become the battlefield.